The bitter winds howled across the frozen plains, carried with them shards of ice that pierced the skin like tiny, invisible knives. Snow blanketed the land in a thick, suffocating sheet, and the rivers had hardened into icy mirrors reflecting the weak, pale sun. For the cavemen, this season was the ultimate test of endurance. Families huddled together inside makeshift shelters constructed from branches, stones, and the hides of animals they had hunted in the warmer months. These shelters were crude, often no more than shallow pits covered with leaves and animal skins. Yet they were a marvel of survival ingenuity. Inside, the air was dense and cold, but the knowledge of how to stay alive had been passed down through generations. Fires meticulously maintained, with the heart of these homes, their flames dancing against the walls, illuminating the rugged faces of those who had survived countless winters. The cavemen understood that sleep was not just rest. It was a strategy, a vital component of survival. Without proper sleep, even the strongest hunter would lose his sharpness, and the risk of frostbite or predation increased exponentially. They observed the patterns of animals, learning that warmth was often found in numbers, that proximity mattered, and that insulation was more than just physical, it was communal. Blankets made from layers of fur were stacked strategically, and each person's position was deliberate. Elders in the center, younger hunters shielding the edges, and the youngest children cradled in the midst of protective arms. Even the way the fire was positioned mattered, casting heat upward into the shelter and keeping the densest cold near the outer walls where the most resilient could withstand it. Every action, from a careful layering of hides to the selection of sleeping spots, was calculated with survival in mind, making sleep not just possible, but optimal in an otherwise unforgiving environment. The fire was the ultimate companion, its embers glowing red even as the night dragged on and the temperature plummeted further. Cavemen had learned the delicate art of firekeeping, understanding which woods burned longest, which mosses could ignite quickly, and how to shield flames from the wind's relentless assault. Fire was more than warmth. It was a guardian against predators, a source of light, and a psychological shield against the oppressive darkness of winter. Hunters returning from night expeditions would carefully add logs, ensuring the flame never died, as its loss could mean not just discomfort, but death. The smoke, though sometimes irritating, served a purpose, deterring insects and keeping wild animals at a distance. Around the fire, sleeping arrangements were meticulously planned. Furs closest to the flames would be reserved for those most vulnerable to the cold, the elderly, the sick, and the youngest children. Cavemen often slept in tight clusters, sharing body heat, their collective warmth amplifying the fire's effect. Even the placement of the fire within the shelter was strategic. Too close, and the heat would suffocate or dry out the air. Too far, and the cold would penetrate the innermost layers of their bedding. They had learned that rest and warmth were inseparable, and that even the smallest lapse in vigilance could lead to frozen limbs, disturbed sleep, and weakened bodies. Fires were tended to like sacred objects with attention and care, because they were the difference between a night of restful, protective sleep and one filled with shivering anxiety and vulnerability. While furs provided the first layer of comfort, cavemen quickly discovered that clever layering could turn even a cold cave into a surprisingly cozy sleeping space. Dry moss, gathered in the autumn, was layered beneath the hides to provide insulation from the frozen ground. Animal skins, often thick and rough, were arranged in overlapping mats, trapping heat and preventing it from escaping. Some clever hunters even observed the nesting habits of local wildlife, mimicking the ways that creatures like foxes and rabbits insulated themselves from the cold. Cavemen would build raised platforms from logs or stones in larger caves, creating beds that kept them off the coldest, damp floors. This knowledge was not universal but localized, evolving from trial and error and shared orally through generations. Every inch of the sleeping area was considered. Even gaps between skins were filled with leaves, bark, or extra furs to eliminate drafts. The result was a surprisingly effective microclimate, where the outer edges might still be frosty, but the central sleeping area remained snug and nearly impervious to the extreme cold. Cavemen understood the importance of layering not just for heat, but also for cushioning, as even a single night on hard, frozen ground could leave the body aching and vulnerable. By the time the winter was at its harshest, Sleeping arrangements have become sophisticated, almost ritualistic, as families took meticulous care and preparation, ensuring that each night's sleep would provide the energy and alertness necessary for the next day's survival challenges. Cavemen had also learned that their bodies could adapt to the harsh winters, and routine played a critical role in optimizing sleep. Days were structured around daylight and activity: hunting, gathering, maintaining shelters, and tending fires. By evening, the body craved rest, and cavemen relied on circadian rhythms that were surprisingly attuned to natural light and darkness. Eating patterns contributed to warmth, too. High-protein meals and fats from hunted animals were consumed in the evening, fueling the body for overnight heat generation. Even breathing techniques mattered. Sleeping curled up minimized heat loss, while slow, measured breaths prevented rapid cooling. Cavemen also recognized that movement before sleep. A short walk, tending tools, or shifting logs on fire helped circulate blood and maintain warmth. In essence, survival sleep was active preparation. The act of lying down was preceded by a series of deliberate behaviors designed to optimize comfort and conserve energy by aligning sleep with natural cycles and body adaptation strategies. Cavemen could endure nights that would have killed an unprepared modern human. Over time, the tribe became attuned not only to the environment but also to each other's needs, adjusting sleeping positions, adding furs as needed, and creating a harmonious balance of warmth and rest that made the harsh winter nights not just survivable, but even restorative. Beyond physical arrangements, sleep in freezing winters depended on a sense of security and psychological comfort. Cavemen were acutely aware that fear, anxiety, or hunger could disrupt sleep, leaving them vulnerable to cold and predators. Storytelling, quiet humming, and whispered advice around the fire soothed nerves and reinforced communal bonds. Sharing experiences, knowledge, and even simple laughter became a form of emotional insulation, buffering the harsh reality outside. The presence of family members, the rhythmic crackle of the fire, and the soft rustle of furs created a multi-sensory cocoon of safety. Even the knowledge that their hunting strategies and winter preparations were sound contributed to a sense of calm. Cavemen were, in many ways, engineers of both physical and emotional comfort, understanding that survival required both body and mind to be rested. Through trial, observation, and cultural transmission, they transformed the brutal winters into a season of endurance and wisdom. Sleep became a sacred, life-sustaining practice, an intricate interplay of fire, furs, routine, and human connection that ensured that even in the freezing wilderness, life continued, strong and unbroken.